YMCA education series is free and open to the public, so we encourage you to spread the word and invite family and friends to participate. We host approximately 8 to 10 of these programs a month, varying on a lot of different topics. This program will last about an hour, and you might find that you have questions during the presentation, which we'll be happy to answer during, but mostly at the end. When you have a question for the speakers, simply type it into the chat section on your screen, and I can relay the question to Matt at the end of the program or during it if it's during the program. I ask that you please keep your questions general, and we'll do the best to address them. Thank you again for joining us this evening. I would now like to introduce our speaker, Matt Margolis. Matt Margolis will discuss the ins and outs of Medicaid for nursing homes and supportive living facilities and why it's never too late to protect your assets. With that, I'd like to welcome Matt. Hello, everyone.
Thanks, Pam. Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hope everybody had a great 4th, a safe 4th. And for those of you that live in town, I highly recommend the Northbrook Farmers Market. I was just telling Pam, I was there bright and early, like before it actually even starts, just to get all the best produce and take it away from everybody else, and try to make it home with it all safely on my bike. But it's awesome. So if you haven't been to the farmers market, it is really great. And they are not paying me to say this, I promise. So my name is Matt Margolis, as Pam said. I've been doing these talks with the Y for the last, I think close to 5 years. I think my first talk, I remember rolling into my first talk, and that was the morning that Donald Trump was elected. It was my birthday, and Donald Trump was elected president, and I was rolling in for my first YMCA talk, or one of the first ones. Weird memory. So that's how long I've been doing these talks. I speak pretty close to every month. In the past, I didn't do these talks in the summer because of the camps and the various programs that the Y has, and they really couldn't give up any space. But now, thanks to Zoom, you get to see me year-round if you desire. So my partner Lauren Weldon and I have a what I sort of refer to as like a boutique elder law and estate planning practice in downtown Park Ridge. So even though I'm a Northbrook resident, our practice is in downtown Park Ridge. And we concentrate in estate planning and elder law. That's all we do. We don't do, your quote unquote simple real estate transaction. We don't handle your divorce. We don't do your personal injury case. We literally just do wills, trusts, powers of attorney, special needs planning, asset protection work, powers of attorney for 18-year-olds going off to college. And then on the elder law side, a lot of what we do is related to what we're going to talk about today. Really, a lot of the work we do on that end relates to Medicaid, helping people apply for Medicaid in nursing homes and supportive living facilities. We help, and not just helping people apply for Medicaid, but what we'll discuss today is helping people protect assets as well. So again, not just applying for Medicaid, but helping people protect, what they value most, for their loved ones. And then we also help with a particular benefit for veterans or surviving spouses of veterans. It's called the aid and attendance benefit. And so we help see veterans and their families with that benefit if and when they need long-term care. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. My presentation style is totally conversational. What does that mean? That means that you are not going to see any PowerPoints, no slides, none of that, which means you're forced to just listen to me talk the whole time, for better or worse. I think for better, because I think that when we get stuck with PowerPoints and slides, we kind of get too focused on the words in front of us and not what the speaker is saying. And I'm not going to say that I'm the most important person in the world, but I would say that if you're tuning into this talk, you're probably interested in getting some good information, and I hope to provide that today. So what I will say is, if you have questions, why don't we do this? I would say, if you're showing your screen, if you want to raise your hand, okay, don't keep it on mute, but if you raise your hand, and then I might give you one of these, not trying to be rude, but you know what, listen, sometimes I will lose my train of thought if I answer a question in the middle of where I'm going. So I'll give you one of these, and I promise to answer your question. And in some cases, I might just say, listen, you know what, I'm going to get there, I promise. So give me some time, and I will answer your question. You're just going to have to wait and you kind of let it flow naturally. I think that's it. So like Pam said, if you can keep yourself on mute, just so that there's no background noise, that'd be great. All right, without further ado, let's get started here, right? How to protect assets and apply for Medicaid legally, right? Because I'm a lawyer, I can't tell you what to do that's illegal. Um, so I think first, what I want to just make sure people have an understanding about, because I think it can be a little bit confusing, is um, deciphering between Medicare and Medicaid. Okay, because a lot of people kind of mix up those two terms, right? And they sound so similar to one another, and they are, and they can be actually very different benefits, right? And so Medicare is health insurance, right? It's health insurance for those that are 65 years and better. Um, and for some individuals that have disabilities, they're able to tap into Medicare at an earlier age. But for the vast majority of people, Medicare is going to be something that we're going to get, and hopefully it's still around when I'm 65. Um, Medicare is going to be that health insurance that, you know, it comes out of our Social Security and that covers us. Medicare is very different from Medicaid. Medicaid is a benefit that we apply for if we need help paying for health care. Now, there is a form of Medicaid that people that are living below the poverty line would apply for. And that type of Medicaid sort of acts more like Medicare. It acts more like government-based health insurance. Okay, and people of all ages can apply for that form of Medicaid. We kind of refer to it as community Medicaid. We are not going to discuss that today. All right, today we're going to be talking about really the Medicaid that covers nursing home care or care in a supportive living facility. This form of Medicaid is very different from Medicare. Okay, Medicaid we have to apply for, and we have to meet certain income and asset requirements to apply for it in order for it to then pay for our long-term care needs. Okay, and I'll talk about those qualifications in a minute. Medicare does not pay for our care for an extended period of time in a long-term care facility. Okay, I'll say it again. Medicare is not a benefit that will pay for our long-term care for an extended period of time in a long-term care facility. Medicare has a very limited benefit as far as covering any kind of care in a facility. The types of facilities we're going to be talking about today are skilled nursing facility, you know, sort of a nursing home. You know, maybe the phrase that we're all more familiar with. My dad, I feel like once in a while throws out the term. He calls it a convalescent home. My dad's 89. To give you some context, I feel that might have been a phrase that was used before my time. So we'll be talking about nursing homes and supportive living facilities. These are the two types of places in Illinois where we can apply for Medicaid to pay for our long-term care. Let's talk about what Medicare covers first. Medicare covers a very small portion of our long-term care needs. So in order for Medicare to cover some of my care in a nursing home, I have to be in a hospital and I have to be inpatient status. I can't be under observation. I have to have 3 overnights inpatient status. Okay, at least 3 overnights of inpatient status. I could have 5 overnights of inpatient status. I could have 4 nights of inpatient status and 3 nights of observation, but I have to at least have 3 nights of inpatient status in a hospital. And then when I'm discharged to do rehab, which is typically done in a skilled nursing facility, right? Most rehab, for anybody who's not familiar, most rehab that's done after we leave a hospital is done in a skilled nursing facility. If I have those 3 overnights of inpatient status and then I'm discharged to do rehab in a skilled nursing facility, then what I'm looking at is the idea that Medicare will cover the first 20 days of rehab at 100%. Okay, so the first 20 days, Medicare covers 100%. And then up to a remaining 80 days. Okay, so this would be for a total of 100. So the next 80 days after the first 20, Medicare is going to cover 80% of that. And then if I've got a good Medicare supplement, that supplement is going to pick up the other 20%. So, you know, if I'm in rehab and I'm doing well and I'm making progress, the best case scenario is that I'm going to get 100 days taken care of, no out of pocket. And that's between the combination of Medicare covering it and my Medicare supplement covering it. Now, for anybody on this call that has a A Medicare Advantage plan, those work a little bit different. Those, I'm familiar to some extent with them. A lot of them are different, but I know that the few that I've seen, the majority that I've seen, tend to work in the way where the supplement covers like days 21 to 40. It picks up that additional 20%, and then days like 41 to 60, the supplement, the Advantage plan doesn't cover that 20%, and that 20% is out of pocket. But then days 61 to 100, the supplement covers it, or the Advantage plan covers it. So in general, if you have a Medicare supplement or a Medicare Advantage plan, hey, this might be a good time to reach out to the person that helped you pick that plan and talk to them and find out, hey, how does my plan work? If I leave a hospital and I go to a nursing home for rehab, how much of that rehab, or what percentage of that rehab, will my supplement or Advantage plan cover? Right? These are good things to know. And probably, arguably, weren't questions that you asked at the time that you got the policy, or pretty unlikely that you might have asked those questions at the time you got them, right? Because most of us, when we turn 65, we're still feeling pretty young and healthy, hopefully, and we're not necessarily already thinking of like, oh, well, if I'm in a nursing home at some point for rehab after I go to the hospital, how much of that is going to be covered? So good things to ask, right? Not a bad thing to ask. So again, I want to be clear. Medicare has there's very limited coverage by Medicare for any kind of long-term care. And it's really only this rehab period. That's it. So the most Medicare will cover is 100 days post-hospital discharge. And I needed to have been in the hospital for at least 3 overnights, classified as inpatient status. So another good thing to take away from this is that if you or a loved one is in the hospital, before you're getting discharged, or before that person's getting discharged, you need to be asking about what your status is. You really need to be talking to the doctors. And if you're under observation and they're saying, hey, sir, ma'am, you're under observation, or you might have had 1 night of inpatient status, this might be a situation where you need to get a family member involved. It might be worth it to like hire a patient advocate and get somebody on your side and maybe work with the hospital and say, hey, listen, this person really should have been inpatient status. It might be worth it to pay a professional a couple $100 or whatever their fee might be to fight on your behalf with the hospital, because I'll tell you, rehab in a nursing home, if Medicare is not covering it, you are looking at somewhere between $450 and $700 a day. A day. So I've had clients come to me that were in rehab for a month. They just thought Medicare was covering it. And they come to me saying, Matt, I got this $21,000 bill from the nursing home for a month of rehab. What's going on here? And, we go back and we find out that they didn't have the 3 overnights of inpatient status. And that's really all it boils down to. Okay. So we really need to be advocates for ourselves. And if we can't, then we need to find somebody that can be. You can always use me as a resource. That's not something that we help clients with, but we've got a wonderful array of people that we know very well that can help in virtually any situation that comes up. The last thing I'm going to say about rehab, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, is that we are not guaranteed 100 days of Medicare coverage. Okay. What does that mean? Well, it might be day 27 of rehab. And what happens is, the team at the rehab center, at the nursing home, has a meeting, and they bring my wife in, or my daughter, my adult son or my adult daughter, and they say, you know what, guys, we're gonna have this care meeting, and we're talking about Matt and how he's doing. And you know what? He's just not making any progress. Right? Matt we're not able to rehab him anymore. Right? And we know that's a reality. We know that we've seen loved ones, or we've heard of stories where somebody goes to rehab and we want them to get better, but in some cases people just can't. Right? We use the term plateaued. They've plateaued. Right? I'm not able to make any more progress. I'm trying, but at some point maybe I just can't even try anymore. Right? I'm not willing to try to use a walker to walk anymore, and I've just, for better or worse, I've given up, and I'm going to use the wheelchair. I'm not going to try to walk. I'm not going to try to do this. I'm not going to try to do that. I'm done with the physical therapy. You know what? My body's just telling me that I can't do it, or my brain is telling me I can't do it. And when we've plateaued, okay, and when the nursing home and the staff feels like we've plateaued, well, Medicare stops paying. Medicare only pays for that coverage if I am rehabbing, if I am making progress, if I am trying to get better. Once I've plateaued, typically what they'll do is they'll give the family some notice and say, you know what, in 3 days or 5 days or 7 days, Medicare is going to stop paying. And Matt can stay here. All right, he can stay here long term, but it's going to be, $300 a day, or $350 a day, or $400 a day. And those numbers are real numbers, guys, as far as what we're looking at for costs, private pay in a skilled nursing facility, in a nursing home. Probably somewhere between $300 and $400 a day. Okay, right. The average that we see is probably somewhere between $8,500 and $12,000 a month, sort of in the Chicagoland area. So let's talk about Medicaid and how Medicaid works. So let's say, now I'm at a point where Medicare is done, but I need to stay in the nursing home. I can't come home, right? My wife cannot take care of me herself at home, or if I'm a widower, or if I was not married, if I don't have a spouse, if I don't have adult children, and nobody's going to be able to take care of me at home, and maybe I also don't have the finances to be cared for at home, right? Home care, while it's great, and I think most of us would agree, right? If everybody was showing me their screen and I said, hey, who would prefer to be in a nursing home or at home in their own home with a caregiver, I would argue 85% of people at least would say, I'd rather be in my own home with a caregiver than in a nursing home. Okay. But in-home care is very expensive. Okay. You're looking at right now, the hourly rates for most in-home caregiving companies, $30 an hour. Okay. I mean, think if somebody needs true 24-hour care. And 24-hour care, not like somebody living in my house and being entitled to 8 hours of sleep every night, because there are in-home caregivers that you can do that, and you can hire them through a company, and those you tend to get a break. You're not paying $30 an hour times 24 hours. You're not even paying $30 an hour times 16 hours, which is how much they're going to be working. But that could be $300 to $350 a day. Could be more, honestly. I don't think I'm as up to speed on what that number looks like these days. But there are some people that they need true 24-hour care because they get up in the middle of the night, they wander, there are fall risks. So we need a caregiver that's awake and alert, because if this person is getting up 3-4 times a night to go to the bathroom or to wander around, we want to make sure that person's not going to fall and break something. And so I've got clients that have two caregivers doing 12-hour shifts. They are paying 24 hours a day, $30 an hour, 7 days a week. Right? Do the math. $720 a day, right? Over $20,000 a month for in-home care. It's not cheap, right? The majority of us will not be able to afford that type of care if we ever need it. And so what happens? We look at nursing homes, right? We look at a nursing home, but then again, we still look at this idea of $10,000 a month. That's a lot of money. And so even if we have a couple $100,000, we know that at some point it may run out. Okay, so let's talk about Medicaid, right? Medicaid, if I'm a single individual, if I'm a widower applying for Medicaid in a nursing home, I am allowed to have $2,000 in total assets. Okay, that includes the total of my checking accounts, savings accounts, brokerage accounts, stocks, IRAs, 401ks, real estate that I own. I can have $2,000 total between all of that in my name. Okay, so I can have $2,000 in total assets, including cash value of any life insurance policy. So I've got a life insurance policy with cash value. That's included as part of that $2,000 that I'm allowed. Okay, so I've got $2,000 in total assets. As far as income is concerned, I get to keep $30 a month of my income. Okay, $30 a month of my income. So what does that mean? That means that if I have $2,000 coming in from Social Security, let's say, I get to obviously pay for, my Medicare and those deductions that come out. If I have a Medicare supplement, I can continue to pay for my Medicare supplement, and it would make sense to keep my supplement. But then the remainder of my income, other than what's going to Medicare, other than what's going to the supplement and the $30 of spending money that that the state of Illinois so graciously allows me to keep each month, the remainder of my income will go to the nursing home. But that is my only financial responsibility to the nursing home on a monthly basis. The state of Illinois and the Medicaid program picks up the rest. Then the last thing we look at is a look back period. So Medicaid has a 5-year look back period. Okay, and the look back period, what it means is that Medicaid wants to see what I did with all of my money over the last 5 years. Basically, what they're looking for is, did Matt give away any money? Because in their eyes, even if it's not the case, right? Even if I was healthy as a horse, I had a stroke out of nowhere at age 70, and I ended up in the hospital, and I ended up in a nursing home, Medicaid's going to take the side that if I gave any money away within the 5 years prior to applying for Medicaid, that I did so because I wanted to apply for Medicaid, because I wanted to be Medicaid eligible. Okay, even if I didn't, and there's nothing I'm going to be able to say really to fight that argument. And so when I apply for Medicaid, this 5-year look back, I need to show 5 years of statements for every single bank account, an investment account, and life insurance policy, an IRA that I have. 5 years of tax returns. Again, Medicaid is looking to see, did I give away any money? Now, the term that Medicaid uses is, did I make any transfers for less than fair market value? And it's a little different. So transfer for less than fair market value is a little bit different than just using the term gift, even though we use the term gift anyway, because it's just easy and we can all kind of get behind that. But here's where there's a little bit of a difference, right? Nobody would argue if I wrote Joan on this call a check for $10,000 tomorrow, nobody would argue that that's a gift, right? Joan's not giving me anything. She's not selling me anything. I'm just giving her a check because I'm a really nice person. Medicaid would say that's a $10,000 gift, right? Of course, we would all agree with that. But if Joan sold me, I'm confusing myself. If I sold Joan my car that was worth $30,000 for $5,000, we would all say, well, Joan got a really good deal, right? Medicaid would say, Matt, you made a $25,000 transfer for less than fair market value. You sold your car that was worth $30,000 for $5,000. You gave away, in essence, you gave away $25,000. In Medicaid's eyes, you gave away $25,000 that you could have otherwise used to pay for your care for a longer period of time until Medicaid kicked in, right? That's how they look at it. What Medicaid's also going to look at, and what they're also going to take issue with, and this is really unfortunate, would be things like, if I was paying for guitar lessons for my grandson, I've seen them take issues with clients that, were making pretty significant donations to their church or their synagogue. The $20 every week, not a big deal, but somebody that, is doing the true, in the Catholic faith, like the true tithing, where they're actually, I've got clients that are very religious enough where they're giving a certain percentage of their income every month to the church. That can be an issue, right? They don't care that it's a donation, unfortunately, in some of these cases. So we just have to be conscious of the money that we're giving away. I always tell clients clearly, when somebody comes to see me, I can't prevent anything they did in the past, right? We just have to work around it. But once clients see me and we're having any kind of talk about Medicaid, it's sort of like, listen, you're going to pump the brakes on, I know that Christmas is coming up, or I know that Hanukkah is around the corner, or I know your son is getting married, or your daughter's having a bat mitzvah, or whatever it is. But this is not the time to be giving them like $1,000 gift or a $2,000 gift like you would have wanted to. Like, I don't like to tell you that. I don't want to tell you that, but I also don't want to tell you not to do it, because then we might have an issue down the road. Okay. The way that Medicaid deals with gifting is they penalize us. All right. Let me explain what that means. So let's just say that, I go to apply for Medicaid, right? And it's August 1st. I move into the nursing home. I have $2,000 or less in my name, just like Medicaid allows me to have. I know that I'm gonna have to give them a portion of my income based on the $30 I get to keep and my Medicare supplement, blah, blah, blah. We know all that's fine, but I gave away $30,000 over the last 5 years. And it doesn't matter if it was 4 years ago or 2 months ago. It's not, Medicaid doesn't prorate the gift based on when you gave it away. So Medicaid says, Matt, you're approved, but the nursing home costs $10,000 a month. If you were paying privately, it would cost $10,000 a month. You gave away $30,000. So you're approved, but you need to figure out a way to pay for the next 3 months. Okay, what they do is they take the amount of the gift and they divide it by the monthly cost of care. Okay, and so I got to figure out a way to pay for August, September, and October now. How do I do that though if I've got $2,000 in my name? Because that's the total amount of assets I can keep, and I've got $2,000 a month of Social Security coming in. I have a pretty hard time paying $10,000 a month for the next 3 months. So I don't have a magic answer for that one, just to let everybody know. So I have no there's no rabbit out of the hat for that. That's really working it out with the nursing home. In that case, in an ideal world, which doesn't tend to exist in these scenarios, I go back to the people I gave the money to and I say, hey, I really need that money back. You need to help. You need to help me use that money to pay for the next 3 months. If I can't do that, then basically I'm pleading with the nursing home, because at this point it doesn't really become a Medicaid issue. Medicaid says, hey, Matt, you're fine, but we're not going to pay for you until November. So basically I then have to go to the nursing home and say, hey, nursing home, listen, is there any way you will let me stay here for the next 3 months, knowing that Medicaid is not going to reimburse you anything for those months? I'll give you all my income. I'll give you all my, the $2,000 that comes in. I'll give you all the $2,000 that's sitting in my bank account that I'm otherwise allowed to keep. But I'm going to be $20,000 plus short for this 3 month period. And you're really pleading with the nursing home in that scenario. It's not an ideal situation to be in. In a lot of cases, it's a rock and a hard place. Knock on wood. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but we've got a pretty busy practice, and I can say that we haven't had that situation come up. In at least the last 6 years, 6.5 years, Lauren and I have had our practice, and I never saw it at my old practice where I was for 4 years. So I know it does happen, and I wish I could tell you, what the success rate is, and I think it's going to be dependent, right? I mean, are we looking at a 5-month penalty? Are we looking at a 1-month penalty? Am I somebody that has a nice pension? I've got clients, and you might be people on this call, or you might have friends or family, if they were a teacher or a firefighter or a police officer, there are some professions that I've got clients that have $8,000, $9,000 pensions. I mean, if I had $9,000 of income coming in each month, the nursing home might say, yeah, sure, you're fine. Right? You've got enough income. You're basically almost able to pay our full rate the next couple months. Right? So I'm not going to go down that path any further. Just want to kind of give you guys an idea as to how that works. If I'm a married couple, right? So if it's a married couple applying for Medicaid, and not necessarily both spouses, but let's say that I'm the one applying for Medicaid in a nursing home and my wife is at home, right? And we call her the community spouse. She's living in the community. And I don't like the term that the state uses, but I am what's called the institutionalized spouse. Such a terrible, terrible way to put it. I'm the spouse that's in the nursing home. And so the numbers are a little bit different in this scenario. Okay, so Medicaid allows me as the nursing home spouse to look pretty similar to what I just discussed. I get to keep $2,000 in my name. I get to keep $30 of my income, and then that 5-year look back period applies to me. Now my wife, my spouse, can have $109,560 in assets. Okay, so she can have $109,560 checking, savings, money market, IRAs, cash value of life insurance policies. She can have $109,560 plus a house plus a car. Okay. Medicaid does not have a limit on what the value of the house can be. So my wife can have a house that's worth condo that's worth $150,000. She can have a $1 million house as well. Okay. In either case, Medicaid allows her to keep the house. And they allow her to have a car as well. Okay. Doesn't really matter on the car. This is not the time to go buy a Ferrari to try to, save money and, put all our money into a car that's an asset that's going to depreciate the second we drive it off the lot. But my wife could have a $20,000 Toyota. She could have an $85,000 Mercedes. Again, Medicaid is not giving and putting any kind of limits as to the value of the car or the house. Now, in some of these situations, what we will advise people to do is if they're getting ready and getting close to applying for Medicaid, for me, the spouse is going in the nursing home, and my wife and I's total assets are well above the 109,560. If we still have a mortgage on the house, we can pay off that mortgage, right? Because otherwise, we're just going to have to use all that money to sort of, we use the term spend down, to spend down on my care until collectively my wife and I get below $2,000 in my name and $109,000 in her name, right? So this is typically a good situation where we might pay off a car if there's still a loan on the car, pay off the mortgage on the house, right? And obviously we want to be strategic about it. So, I mean, if we're pulling money out of IRAs or 401ks and there's going to be tax consequences, I mean, there's situations where we've got to get a CPA involved. We want to make sure that we're maximizing the situation for the folks that we're working with, right? And for the individuals that are going through this. We don't want to just start, liquidating IRAs and 401ks and not thinking about the tax consequences just because, we're flustered about the situation that we're in, right? This is where it's really important to meet with a professional. And again, whether it's me or another elder law attorney, these are situations where, somebody in our profession can really help, right? This is what we do. We see these situations all the time. We know the ins and outs. We know the various options. We've seen all the different details because there's a lot of similar situations, but there are also a lot that have sort of like these little details that can really make a lot change, create a big change. So my wife's allowed to keep the $109,560, the house and the car. As far as income is concerned, my spouse can have $2,739 a month of income, $2,739. Well, what if her income is not that high, right? What if my wife has a pension or Social Security that's $1,300 a month? Well, what I can do is, now if I was a single individual, any excess income I had, other than the $30 a month that I'm allowed to keep, and then paying for my Medicare supplement and paying for my Medicare A and B, any leftover income I'd have in that situation would have gone to the nursing home. In this situation, I can actually transfer that excess income to my wife, to my spouse, to get her up to that 2739 number. Okay, so if she's below 2739, I can transfer some of my additional income to get her up to it. If she's already at that number or she's over that number, typically we're not able to transfer anything to her. It's a pretty complicated process. She'd have to prove that on a monthly basis for 12 months of the year, her monthly expenses exceed 2739. Now, for some people, that might be true. But again, this is one of those things where in 10 years of doing this, it hasn't come up. It hasn't come up. And in some cases, where we do have the spouse, let's say my wife, let's say I'm younger, right? What if I'm in my 60s going into a nursing home and my wife is still working, and she's making $5,000 a month or $6,000 a month? Well, in those situations, obviously 5,000 is more than 2739 Medicaid would allow her to keep. Basically, there's an algorithm, there's an equation that Medicaid kind of runs those numbers through, and they would say, you know what, Christina, you're going to have to, use $300 a month of your income to give the nursing home. You're based on the equation that we're running, you're going to have to use some of, not only are we going to take Matt's additional income, but you're going to have to provide some of yours as well. Okay. Again, these are situations we don't see a whole lot, just because in these situations, unless we're dealing with somebody that has a very large pension, most people's Social Security kind of falls under $2,500 for the vast majority of people. Majority of people that at least we're meeting with, right? Again, it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there with high pensions or high Social Security numbers. I would say that a lot of times we're just not seeing them, and that might be because either they have enough assets where they're not even looking at Medicaid, or they just don't, they just don't go to an attorney, right? And they handle it on their own. And then the 5-year look back applies to both of us. Okay. So when Medicaid wants to see 5 years, if it's a married couple, even though I'm the one applying for Medicaid, and even if my wife has accounts that are in her name only, we both need to provide statements of our accounts for the last 5 years. All right. Hopefully everybody's with me so far. I only see one face, but that's fine. All right. All right. So let's now talk about what we can do from an asset protection standpoint, right? Maybe this is what most of you tuned in for. So there's sort of two types of ways that we can protect assets. Okay, though there's sort of what we call, the pre-planning, where, and in this case, we're doing planning 5 years prior to ever needing Medicaid, right? And hopefully that the idea of doing it 5 years prior makes sense, right? Because Medicaid is a 5-year look back. So we're trying to do some planning prior to when we think Medicaid is going to if Medicaid ever looks back, we know that because they only look back 5 years, ideally the planning we did was at least 5 year and 1 day prior to the look back. And that way anything we did is fine. Okay. And so there's pre-planning that we do in that case. And then there's what we kind of refer to as crisis planning. And unfortunately, the majority of the planning we do is crisis planning. Crisis planning is, Susan comes to meet with me and she brings her adult son, Jim, and Susan's husband, Paul, is in the nursing, typically the situation is Paul's in the nursing home. Rehab is paying for it, but they know that there's a limited period of time that Medicare is going to cover that rehab. Oh, and in some situations, it's, Susan's already talked to the nursing home and they've said, listen, Medicare is going to be done paying for Paul in 5 days and he's going to stay there, but it's going to be $350 a day private pay. Right. And of course, now Susan's worried because she says, listen, I love Paul and I want to make sure that he's taken care of, but I'm also very concerned about my financial situation, right? What's going to happen to all the money that we have? And maybe Susan's 10 years younger, and maybe Susan's even more worried about that because she might feel like she's got another 20 or 25 good years ahead of her. And she's concerned that she's going to have to spend down all their money over the next couple of years on Paul's care. And at, $10,000 to $12,000 a month, that money's going to go pretty quickly. And now all of a sudden, 3 years from now, their $600,000 nest egg that they were, planning to retire on is $200,000 or worse. He's and it sounds terrible, worse, but he's still alive and he still needs care. And now, she's gonna be left with $109,000. And so again, there's this concern of what do we do? What can we do? So let's talk about the pre-planning, right? So the pre-planning, the goal is, because having a sort of an understanding of this will tie in with the crisis planning. With the pre-planning, the goal is, typically it's not a situation where I'm sitting down with a couple and they already have some sort of diagnosis or some sort of need for care where they're already spending money on their care, right? Because if that's the case, unless they have a significant amount of money, sometimes planning can be tough because we probably don't have 5 years to protect the assets. Right. So the ideal scenario is, and I don't care, it can still be, I'm not going to say there's an ideal age. Sorry, I'm kind of like a really bad itch on my leg. You see me bending down there, just for full disclosure. I'm not going to say that there's like a perfect age, right? Like you got to be 65 and healthy to come in and to do any pre-planning. We've done pre-planning for clients that are 80, early 80s, but they're very healthy, right? Early 80s and already starting to kind of suffer from some sort of, physical issues or cognitive impairment, that's tricky. Again, we might not have 5 years. And so the ideal scenario is that basically, I don't care what age you're at, we feel like we either have 5 years for sure, like we're pretty confident without having that crystal ball, right? Of course, right? Because we know that there are some medical events that can just hit us out of nowhere, right? Sorry to scare people, but we probably heard stories like that. So without having that crystal ball, we feel pretty confident that we're probably not going to need any type of care for at least 5 years. Or, hey, my wife and I are worth $1.5 million. And even though we're paying for care right now, we can pay for care out of pocket for the next 5 years, but we want to stop paying for care after 5 years. I'm not going to say that's as common. Typically people with, $1 million, $1.5 million or more, typically those folks aren't coming to meet with us saying, hey, Matt, we're really concerned about protecting assets and applying for Medicaid. We would help them, right? And even though this is what we do, there's sort of like a little bit of an ethical dilemma in some of those situations where it's like, okay, you've got $2 million. You're really not the person that Medicaid was built for. but we can do it, right? And no judgment, just to be clear, no judgment on our part. We're here to help people. I don't care, who you are, what you look like, what you need. Our goal is to help people. And I look at every client like, if you were, and we treat every client, at least I do, and I know Lauren's the same. If you were my mom or you were my dad, how would I want an attorney to treat you, right? And that's sort of how we work. And so from this pre-planning standpoint, we kind of look at, all right, we are going to take some assets and set them aside. And the way that we set them aside is typically what we're doing, and other attorneys might have different ideas. Most of them are sort of along the same lines as us. What we're going to do is we're going to set up a trust. Okay, and the type of trust we're going to set up is what we call an irrevocable trust. Okay, now anybody that's on this call that has any familiarity with trusts, or maybe you have a trust in place, the vast majority of people that have trusts in place from a planning standpoint likely have a revocable living trust. Okay, this is the most common type of trust out there on the estate planning side of our practice. Probably 95% of the people I meet with when we discuss wills and trusts are probably going to put together a revocable living trust. Great planning tool. Anybody that doesn't have any planning in place, highly recommend it, likely for you. And whether you come to me or somebody else, a really nice tool to use. And for most people, we use that revocable trust as opposed to a will, really to avoid probate and to make sure that when we pass away, our assets go to whoever we want them to go to, but it can be done in a private manner. Doesn't have to go through court. Family doesn't have to hire a lawyer. We don't have to pay all the fees and spend time in court over a year and a half to manage the estate. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about the revocable trust. Well, other than with a revocable trust, I can transfer my house into the trust. I can retitle my bank accounts into the trust. So now my house is in the Matt Margolis trust. My checking account is in the Matt Margolis trust. But I'm the trust maker. I get to make changes to this trust over time. So over time, if my life changes, I can change the trust. I can update it. I'm also the trustee, so I can also manage all the assets in the trust. So now that I put my house in there, now that I put my bank account, my investment account, my stocks, I can still manage all of that just like I did prior to having a trust in place. Great. Okay. Stephen, if you can please mute yourself if you don't mind, just to reduce any background noise, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. So as trustee, I can still manage all my stuff. The trust operates off my social security number. Really, my life doesn't change at all. Okay. In no meaningful way does my life change, do my taxes change, etc. Trust is a pretty flexible document. Only difference I tell clients is when you get your statements from the bank, it's going to say the Matt Margolis Trust, Matt Margolis Trustee, and then your address, versus before when it said Matt Margolis and then your address. That's it. But that type of trust, while it's great at avoiding probate when we die and avoiding the court process and all of the fees and time involved in that, a revocable trust does not protect our assets from Medicaid. Okay, that it does not do. And so we look at this idea of an irrevocable trust. And in our office, we have a term for it. We call it a Medicaid asset protection trust, because that's what we're pretty much using these trusts for. And there's different types of irrevocable trusts out there. There are irrevocable trusts that people with millions and millions of dollars use to help avoid estate taxes when they die. Okay, that is not what we're using this for, right? Basically the opposite. This is, we don't have millions and millions of dollars, but the idea is that if one of us, right, if I'm married, one of us, or if I'm a single individual or a widow or widower, whether I'm single or married, the idea is if one of us or if I need care at some point in the future, I want to be able to protect some of what I have, either for my spouse so that she's not impoverished and being left with $100,000 if I need care for a significant period of time. Or if I'm a single person, I might say, you know what? I want to leave something to my kids or my grandkids. It's important to me to leave something to them. Okay, so these are sort of the situations that we see from a pre-planning standpoint. And so I'm going to be brief because I'm realizing that it's 10:02, we've got until 10:15. So the idea behind this irrevocable trust is going to be different than the revocable trust. Okay, now this trust will still avoid probate, which is really nice. But here's the thing, to get the asset protection, we've got to give something up, right? It'd be too good to be true if I could just shove my assets in this trust and I can still be in control and do whatever I want with the money. Right? We've all heard the phrase, having your cake and eating it too, right? Well, you can't do that in this case, right? In this case, we can't have our cake and eat it too. And so this type of trust, if I want to protect my assets, right? And in this case, we're trying to do it 5 years prior to ever applying for Medicaid. Let's just say, you know what? I've got a house in Wisconsin, right? Say I've got my primary residence in Northbrook. I'm okay with, if at some point the house has to be sold and we have to spend the house on, spend the money on my care. I got a couple $100,000, that money might have to get spent on my care. I don't want to lock that money up, but you know what? I've got this house in Wisconsin and my kids have grown up going there and the grandkids are now going there. And it'd be really important for me to pass that house on to my kids. Or replace that house in Wisconsin with, hey, I've got this $100,000 in this brokerage account. It's unlikely I'll ever need it. And if I get to a point where I'd ever need it to spend for my care, hopefully I could apply for Medicaid at that point. So in either case, right, whether I'm putting the house in Wisconsin in this trust, or I'm going to put this brokerage account with $100,000 in this trust, the way this trust is going to work is that I cannot be the trustee. Okay, number one, even though I'm the trust maker, I cannot make changes to it. So whatever the terms of the trust are from the time I sign it, that's it. Okay, something in my life changes a couple years down the road where I would have maybe wanted to like take this person out or not leave this person any money when I die. Sorry, ship sailed. Okay, so we got to be comfortable with the fact that we cannot make changes to it. Number one. Number two, I cannot be the trustee. So if I transfer that house in Wisconsin to this trust, or I retitle that brokerage account at Edward Jones with $100,000 into this trust, I cannot control those assets anymore. Right? In a lot of cases, this planning we do really works only if we have adult kids, for the most part. Why? Because typically I'm going to put one of my adult children in control. I'm going to say, you know what, Luke, you're going to be the trustee, and you're going to manage the house in Wisconsin. You're going to be the one to manage this brokerage account with $100,000 in it. Okay, so I can't be in control. So I'm naming somebody else as a trustee, and I can have backup trustees, right? Luke, you're my first trustee. Your sister is going to be the next trustee in line. Also, I cannot be a beneficiary of this trust. Now, with a revocable trust, I didn't say this, but with a revocable trust, when we create that, we are our own lifetime beneficiary, right? During our lifetime, if I transfer my house and all my bank accounts into my revocable trust, I can write checks and invest the money and spend it however I want. I'm the beneficiary. It's for my benefit during my lifetime. And when I die, obviously, it's set up to go to my wife. And then if she dies, it goes to my kids. But with the irrevocable trust, for asset protection purposes, I cannot be a beneficiary, right? It can't look like it's for my benefit. Otherwise, Medicaid would say, Matt, that money's yours. It's available to you. Even though you don't have control, it's still for your benefit. So in most cases, our adult children will be the lifetime beneficiaries, right? And this is why it's very rare that this planning works when we don't have adult children involved. I've had people come to me where, they never had kids. And, they're talking about wanting to protect the money and, putting their nieces and nephews in charge. When I start asking questions, yeah, we're not that close. Haven't really talked to them. Maybe we talk once a year. Well, that might not be somebody that you want to all of a sudden have access to all this money, especially when the trust will say that it's 100% for their benefit. And so if they were to take money out and give it to themselves, they wouldn't be doing anything wrong. They wouldn't be doing anything the trust doesn't allow them to do. So there is definitely a leap of faith. And even if we're naming our adult children, right? We know that adult children can be bad seeds at some point as well, right? So there have been cases when we've had clients come to us that have wanted to do this planning, and we've just been uncomfortable with it. And we've just said, listen, you know what, based on the relationship that it seems like you have with your kids from what you're sharing with me, even though you want to proceed with it, you want to pay us money to do this, we don't want to do it. We don't feel comfortable. We don't want to put our stamp of approval on here. You want to go to another attorney that's willing to do that for you, that's fine. And we're not doing that to be mean, but we're doing that because we are concerned that in doing this planning, this person might take the money, and they would be doing nothing wrong if they did. Okay, there is a lot of trust, no pun intended, involved when we do this planning. Okay, and the way it works is basically, if I ever needed access to the money, let's say, forget the fact that it was the house in Wisconsin, because there's really no dollar, there's a dollar value to it, but it's not like I can access money from that house, right? It's a piece of real estate. But let's say I put a $100,000 Edward Jones account in there, and let's just say 10 years from now, I'm 85, I'm 90, I still don't need long-term care, but all my other money's run out, and I really need to tap into that Edward Jones money. In short, basically, I can access it, but I would access it through my kids. I would access it through the lifetime beneficiaries. And based on timing, I'm not going to go into tons of detail, but basically, whoever the trustee is could write a check to a lifetime beneficiary, which could be him or herself, right? So if my son is the trustee and my son and my daughter are both the lifetime beneficiaries, My son could write a check from the trust to himself, and then he could turn around and say, hey, Dad, I love you so much. Here's $5,000. And he would be doing nothing wrong, right? The trust was for his benefit. The money went to him. Once it's in his name, he can do whatever he wants. The issue would be if you wrote a check directly from the trust to me, then I went to apply for Medicaid a year later, even though I put the money in the trust 11 years ago, Medicaid is going to see that transfer, right? Because they're going to go through my bank account. So they're going to see that $10,000 went to me, and they're going to say, hey, where did this come from? Oh, it came from this trust, and it's not, don't worry about it. It's not a trust for my benefit. It's for the benefit of my kids. And they're going to say, yeah, but the money went directly to you. So we're going to call BS on this, and we're going to say that now all that money is available to you, right? Because you ruined the integrity of that trust. You basically proven that the trust was a sham. Okay. I'm going to try to go through this last piece in 6.5 to 7 minutes. Okay, so get ready. Now let's talk about the crisis planning. All right, when we do crisis planning, meaning we don't have 5 years on our side, right? We don't have the idea that we may not need care or we may not need to apply for Medicaid for 5 years. My wife is I'm going into a nursing home tomorrow, or I'm in a nursing home now, and my wife wants to do what she can to protect our assets now. Okay, and so this trust that we just talked about is what we're going to use. Okay, we're going to use this trust, but we're going to use it a little bit differently. And I hope you can follow along with this. All right. If I had a whiteboard, I would draw some pictures for you. So we've got this irrevocable, we have this Medicaid asset protection trust set up, right? And to make things really easy, let's just say my wife and I have $300,000, a house and a car, or $310,000. Okay, $310,000, a house and a car. We know that Medicaid allows me to keep $2,000 in my name and $109,560, a very exact amount, right? $109,560 plus a house plus a car in my wife's name. So we know that if we don't do any planning at all, we're basically, my wife gets to keep the 109, a house and a car, I get to keep 2,000. If we have 310,000 or 311,000 roughly, we have $200,000 at risk, right? Because we have $200,000 more than what Medicaid allows us to keep. So if we do nothing at all, we're going to spend down, is the term we use, we're going to spend down $200,000 on a combination of my care at the nursing home and my wife's typical monthly expenses for the home. And then when that $200,000 is gone, she's down to $109,000 in her name and $2,000 in my name. And by the way, when we do all this planning, we actually have to transfer title of the house out of my name and into my wife's name only. We're going to, after we spend the $200,000, we're going to go ahead and apply for Medicaid for me. All right, great. The other option is that we can do some work to protect assets now. Even though we don't have 5 years on our side, we can protect some assets. And here's how we do it. All right, here's your crash course. We've got $200,000 at risk. We're going to take roughly half. Some situations it works out to be more. Make it easy. We're going to take roughly half of that $200,000. We're going to take $100,000 and we're going to gift it into that asset protection trust, into that Medicaid asset protection trust. Okay, now we're making a gift, like on the doorsteps of applying for Medicaid. So we know Medicaid's going to say, hey, Matt, the nursing home costs $10,000 a month. You just gave away 10 months worth of care. So you have to figure out a way to pay for the next 10 months. Okay, still have another $100,000 though that's out there. That other $100,000, because it has to be out of our names in order to apply. So we take that other $100,000 and we put it into a Medicaid compliant annuity. All right. My disclaimer here, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not insurance licensed. I don't sell any products. My partner does not sell any products. We get no commissions from these products. We get no benefits from these products, but these products are very helpful. And so we tell our clients, we're going to take $100,000 and we're going to put it in this Medicaid compliant annuity. It's not a gift because the annuity is in, let's just say I'm the one going in the nursing home. The annuity is in my name. But this is what we call a single premium immediate annuity, a SPIA. Here's how it works. We give $100,000 to the insurance company, put in this annuity. This annuity is literally set up to make 10 equal monthly payments back to me. It shouldn't surprise you that the 10 equal monthly payments match up with the 10 months that we have to private pay the nursing home because of the penalty that we created by gifting the $100,000 to the trust. And so for those 10 months, I get 10 equal monthly payments from the annuity, which coupled with my income will be enough to pay the penalty. I'll have to pay the full amount to the nursing home, the $10,000 every month for 10 months. When the 10 months is up, the annuity's done. There's no money left in it. Okay, this was not an annuity that we did for Investment purposes, other than the investment of protecting $100,000. Okay, so after 10 months, the annuity's done paying me, and whether my Medicaid application has been approved or not, my only financial responsibility after those 10 months is potentially a portion of my income based on, what my monthly income and my wife's monthly income looks like. Okay. So we do all that. At the end of the day, we're able to protect that additional $100,000, right? So my wife gets to keep the 109,560 in her name, the house, the car, plus the other 100,000 that we put in that trust that our son will be the trustee over, and him and our daughter will be the beneficiaries, right? I'm going to say beneficiaries in quotation marks here because we all really know that it's really for our benefit during our lifetime, and that we can have access to it through our kids if we need it, but that upon our passing, it would go to them. So I know I went through that quick. Okay, and let me see if I can do it again really well. We're at 10:14. I hope people got that right. Again, we took the $200,000 that would have been at risk. We took half and put it in the trust. That $100,000, if the nursing home costs $10,000 a month, creates a 10-month penalty because they take the amount of the gift and they divide it by the monthly cost of care. So there's a 10-month penalty, but we rectified that penalty by putting the other $100,000 that we had that was too much for Medicaid purposes in that annuity, and that annuity made payments to us for 10 months so that we could pay off the nursing home for that penalty that we created, right? I know that can be a little complicated, so I hope everybody got it. I know it's kind of hard to digest, especially sometimes, when we don't have, visuals to go with that specific piece. That's it. It's 10:14, probably gonna be 10:15 in a second here. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, yours truly included.
Thank you, Matt. Does anyone have any questions? I know we have a short period of time, but there's still some time. If you do, just raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm going to start to close this out. Thank you again, Matt. I learned a lot through that. So that concludes our YMCA Education Series presentation. On behalf of the North Suburban YMCA and our YES series, we thank you for supporting our organization and programs like this. Special thank you from Matt for speaking with us today. Programs like this are free and open to everyone in the community. So if you enjoyed today's program and would like to support the North Suburban YMCA, please consider a donation at our website, www.nsymca.org. We hope to see you at our next speaker series, which is next Thursday, July 15th at 10 a.m. with Conversations in Aging by the Brookdale Senior Living. So that's going to be a fun presentation. But thank you, Matt, again for today. I really learned stuff, and have a great day.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye. Thank you.